Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Philip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
Is 2024 your year to retire? Well, today we have your retirement and financial forecast for 2024 so you can understand the key factors you might want to consider before you enter this next phase of your life. We're so glad you're here with us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is, of course, President and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring, and I am Jen Rezac alongside and looking forward to this conversation today. There's a lot of financial factors that we want to talk about as we try to figure out what is in store for us here in 2024. So, Philip, looking forward to hearing some insights from you, and I hope you're doing great today.
Hey, we are. It's a new year, and we're off to a great start, and, it's we'll have to see what happens this year. There's a lot of stuff kind of coming down the pike.
Yeah, so I guess what you're trying to say, though, is you don't have a crystal ball or a magic 8-ball or anything. You can't totally...
No, I don't know where the markets are going to end up. I don't know who's going to get elected president. All those important things.
There's a lot.
Crystal ball's just not working today.
Yeah, there you go. There's just still a lot that we don't know. But this will still be a great conversation today. Financial analysts say persistent inflation, the possibility of living a long time in retirement. These are two of the biggest factors to consider for people retiring this year. And of course, that's nothing new. These aren't new issues, brand new to you and the things you talk to your clients about. But how do you talk to people about some of these challenges?
They're not new challenges. I'm going to say it this way. They are bigger challenges now, though, right? Because we've actually lived through some pretty high inflation the last several years. And we as Americans aren't used to that, right? We're used to that 1%, 2%, 2.5% inflation. And we saw much higher than that these last few years. And so that's got people really riled up is probably not the right word, but making them think a little bit more about their whole retirement situation. And so that's a conversation we have when we sit down and talk to folks that looking at retirement and trying to pick what's the best timing for us to retire, and so we have to look at several factors because we have this new history of this last several years of higher inflation. And not that we think it's going to continue, but it still gives us the possibility that it could happen again because it's been a long time since, we saw this before. And so we have to take those things into consideration when we start building out our planning process to make sure that folks are going to have enough to live off of in retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, not new challenges, certainly, but definitely very prominent and certainly, in some ways bigger than what they have been in the past. And when we talk about things like inflation, and I know, there's a lot of different numbers out there, Philip, and we're starting to hear reports that inflation is slowing down. But the reality is costs will keep going up. And I know inflation isn't as hot right now as it has been, but just talk about the challenges of, having to spend more now because everything costs more, but also you're trying to save more so you can keep ahead of inflation in the future. It's really hard to spend more and save more at the same time.
It really is. Folks that haven't retired yet that are making that planning process, it's much more difficult now because you're right. Their current living expenses continue to go up. Just look at the food costs over the last 3 years and what's happened there. Gas prices have kind of gone up and then come back down a little bit and gone back up a little bit. But we're used to those gas prices doing that. But the food cost and other things, cost of everything else has gone up substantially. And so it just shows you that now more than ever, you have to have a plan in place that takes into consideration what could happen. Not these low numbers that people have used before, but we have to look at, okay, what could inflation be? What could happen in the stock market? And plan for a worst case scenario, Jen.
Yeah, absolutely. Planning for that, gosh, that worst case scenario. So many times we are looking through rose-colored glasses, or maybe just trying to, I don't know if we're trying to, but we're just hoping that the best will happen. How do you talk to people about finding the right balance between growth and preservation, so that way, we're preserving in case of the worst case scenario, but we're also trying to capture a little growth as well? How do you talk to people about the balance?
So the first thing we look at is, we have software that says, okay, what is your risk number? On a scale of 1 to 100, where you lie in that realm. And I think that's kind of the starting point for us, is to try to determine what that is. And then that allows us to have a conversation. Look, there's really two types of diversification in this world we live in. One is to diversify between growth and preservation, right? Preservation, we're going to save our money. We're going to hold on to it. We don't have to worry about losses in the market. Growth, hey, we're going to have some ups and downs, but ultimately, long term, we will win and grow our money. So that's the first diversification we need. The second diversification is, okay, now with that principal preservation fund, how are we going to diversify that into what kind of assets are we going to use? And then on the other side of the risk bucket, how are we going to allocate those assets to diversify those among different asset classes? So really it's having that discussion. And a lot of times we sit down with folks that have too much risk, and it's not unusual to sit down with folks that don't have enough risk in their portfolios. It takes both to make it through retirement. And that's exactly, Jen, why I created the core retirement design, to help people really design that retirement they always dreamed of by looking at 3 concentration areas. One is, how much risk do we have? 2, what's our tax situation going to look like in retirement? What can we do to be better prepared for taxes in retirement? And then 3 is, what's our income going to look like? Where are we going to get our income from? And that's the whole income planning piece. And give us a call at 863-285-3815 to start the process of that core retirement analysis. That number, one more time, Jen, is 863-285-3815.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring, and I am Jen Rezac alongside, talking today about your 2024 retirement and financial forecast. 2022, I wasn't even messing up on 2023, Philip. I went way back. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever done anything like this. You've never had to change your name when you got married, but randomly I'll sign my name with like my maiden name, like, every 10 years or so. It just randomly happens. And it's like, where did that come from? All right. Anyway, 2024 is the year that we are in right now. And the latest reports indicate the Social Security Trust Fund could fall short this year without action by Congress. And one of the options being considered is raising full retirement age. Kind of an interesting thing for us to be mindful of what could be happening with Social Security. That's another thing to watch for in our financial forecast.
It really is, Janet. And I found it interesting because I found the little article that kind of gave this little briefing, because I really hadn't come across anything else that gave this indication was even coming up. Because, it's been a long time since Congress changed the rules when it comes to retiring through Social Security. Matter of fact, it's 1983. And that's when they raised the full retirement age to 67 for us folks that were born after 1960. So now they've come up with some more proposals. One proposal would be to raise the full retirement age to 69 over the next 8 years. They wouldn't start until 2026. And so I'm sure, it would be 69 or 67 in 2 months or 67 in 6 months, whatever it ends up being, until they get to that full phase in of age 69. And what I didn't see is early retirement, Jen. And I think that's probably the biggest issue, is people are taking the advantage of age 62. That's one that I think, because it didn't get pushed back last time, I think that's one that probably needs to be pushed back further than anything. That would help Social Security immensely. But
Yeah.
You Google it, and you can't find any of these things through Google right now.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so Social Security, the idea of changing the full retirement age, messing with Social Security in general is something that might not be too palatable to very many people who might be running for re-election this year or election. And so I know you mentioned it earlier, 2024 is also an election year. That's another big item to be thinking about. Obviously, there's a lot up in the air right now as far as, what's going on with this presidential election and also in Congress. But let's talk about historically what we see here. How do you typically talk to people who are worried about all the uncertainty and what we might see with the markets during a potentially heated election cycle?
I have the uncertainty discussion all the time. Now, it just happens to be this year's uncertainty discussion is going to be around the political situation and the election. But we have the uncertainty question every year, all the time. Right? What happens when COVID continues? What happens, if we go into a recession? All of that is uncertainty. And so how do we deal with uncertainty in general, Jen, is having a plan in place. And because that plan is the whole idea is to take that uncertainty away from our clients. So they have that plan, that map to follow that they know is going to get them to the end result. And that's the key, I think, in retirement is to add that certainty in there.
Talk a little bit about, Philip, for people who are looking for a little bit more certainty, just looking for some of the different options for what they should consider doing as it relates to their retirement finances. Talk a little bit about your process for helping people start to map this out.
Absolutely, Jen. People have done a good job savings for the most part, right? They've done a lot of things. They think about things too. They think about taxes. They think about making sure they have money saved for retirement. And so these are all areas that we help folks with in retirement planning, all under one roof. I mean, we help people with the tax planning. We help people with the income planning and the risk planning and the whole legacy planning, all of that under one roof right here. Makes it so much easier when we start talking about the different aspects of retirement, because all of those things play a role in the retirement process. And those things all come into play when we create our core retirement design. Give us that phone call, 30 minutes. We'll answer your questions. Make sure that you're on the path you need to be on for the retirement you always dreamed of. We'll look at what your next steps need to be. Give us a call at 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
The Statler Financial Radio Show continues in just a moment. Stay with us.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial Services can help you uncover any hidden fees in your retirement accounts. Call today to schedule a time to talk about your situation. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. When you're close to retirement, every dollar matters. Would you like to know where your money is going? Find out what kind of fees you're really paying. Statler Financial Services can help. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. Philip, millions of Americans' money is in something like a traditional IRA. In fact, the total value of all of those accounts in 2020 was more than $19 trillion nationally. A lot of money in these types of accounts, right?
There is a lot of money there, a lot of money. So, it's easier that way, right? Because a lot of people have 401ks, and so they're able to build up that savings. And if it's not a 401k, it's a 403b or some deferred comp. There's a lot of different retirement accounts out there that they've been able to put money into. So you've already made the right decision, folks. You've made the right decision. You're putting money away and to save for your retirement. And that's the right choice. Mm-hmm. But I want to help you learn about all the other decisions you need to make when it comes to taking money out of your retirement accounts. Right. You've done a good job of putting money in. The secret is, how do you get it out most effectively and pay the least amount of taxes on it? And that's the trick, Jen.
Yeah, that is a really good point there. And as we get into some of these options for your accounts, that's what you have to understand. The type of the 401k or IRA, the type of account you have, Philip, that really matters when it comes to how your retirement income will be taxed. This is not something that we can afford to overlook, right?
Absolutely not. You need to understand how those plans work in terms of pre-tax and after-tax money. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks, they're putting money in a 401k and they don't know, is it going into a pre-tax or an after-tax, right? The pre-tax is like a traditional IRA. You've never paid tax on that money. So when you pull money out of it, you're going to have to pay some tax. If you've already paid tax on that money, after-tax money, there's a lot of 401ks that have Roth provisions in them, like a Roth IRA. And so, hey, if you've got a Roth provision and you're in a lower tax bracket, that may be what you need to be doing. So pre-tax accounts are pretty much your 401ks, though some of them now actually do have some Roth provisions within them that you can make that election to use. Traditional IRAs, 403bs, which in my lifetime I've only seen one Roth 403b. You don't see those very often, and it's got to be a real specialized deal. Mm-hmm. And then 457s, which are deferred comp plans, are all tax deferred pre-tax accounts. Post-tax are going to be your Roth IRAs, and that's pretty easy, and your Roth provisions within your 401ks.
So with your 401k or your IRA, you need to know the rules for taking money out of those accounts. Not only do we need to understand how they will be taxed, but Philip, what do we need to know about what we call required minimum distributions? That's when we have to start taking money out. What's a real high level thing we need to know about?
So let's talk about required minimum distributions, Jen. Yep. So first, let's talk about the acronym, right? Because that's what people need to understand is when somebody says your RMD, that is the acronym for your required minimum distribution. That's what you'll see that more often than not. Hey, have you taken your RMD? And people will look at me like I've got three eyeballs.
What the heck is that?
What is that? But it's easy, right? Your required minimum distribution is your RMD. So a couple things to realize is that there's been some changes with the Secure Act that was passed back in the end of 2019. And one of the changes was that now the required minimum distribution, that RMD, now you get to take it at 72 instead of 70 and a half. So that's a big deal, right? So it pushes it out a year and a half further down the road than what you had to before. And so you need to know that. The other thing you need to know is that RMDs do not apply to Roth IRAs. So if you have a Roth IRA, guess what? You don't have to take any money out of it if you don't want to.
Okay.
Government doesn't care. You've already paid tax on that money, right? So they don't care. You also, your 401ks are subject to RMDs. Mm-hmm. The only exemption there is if you are over 72, still working for your current employer whose 401k that you're contributing to.
Okay.
You don't have to take any money out of it as long as you're working.
Okay.
But if you stop working in June, guess what? You have to take an RMD out of that account if you're over 72.
Okay. So if you are still, because you would still be in that phase of contributing to it if you're still working. So that's why they can't force you to start taking money out. Okay.
Yep.
But again,
so that's the case.
But again, this is where things start to get a little bit complicated, and really important for us to have somebody who can help us make sure that we understand the rules. So Philip, just talk real quickly about what your process looks like for helping us analyze what's going on with our money and what are some options that we need to consider. Tell me what your process is like.
So when we look at it, the first thing we want to do is have a 30-minute phone call with somebody, right? We want to understand what their big concerns are, where they are, and we want to make sure that we've got a plan in place that's going to help them. If not, then I want to point them in the right direction to make sure they get the help they need, and they're going to be going down the right path. If I can't help them, I want to make sure I give them enough and point them in the right direction where they can get the help they need. That's number one. Number two is we want to walk through and put together ultimately an income plan for them. We want to start out by making sure that they don't have too much risk in their portfolio. We want to make sure that we have a plan in place for taking money out of their retirement accounts in the most effective and tax efficient way as possible. That's why we developed our core retirement design. And you can give us a call to schedule that 30-minute phone consultation. It's that easy, Jen. Just give us a call at 863-285-3815 and tell the receptionist, hey, I want to schedule a 30-minute consultation with Philip. It's that simple. We'll reach out, we'll give you a call, and we'll have a conversation about where you are and where you're trying to get to.
That number again, 863-285-3815 for that quick conversation. There's a lot you can uncover there. Talking today about 401k and IRA decisions. There's a couple more things I want to make sure that we get to, Philip, before our next break. When we're talking about taking money out of our accounts, there are taxes that can apply when we are withdrawing income, which we've spent some time talking about here. Also, there are penalties that can apply if we don't follow the rules. And this is a really big deal. What do we need to know as a retiree about the penalties with those required minimum distributions if you don't do this the right way?
Absolutely, Jen. That is so true. They are substantial penalties. And I'm going to talk about, before I did the RMD one, I want to talk about the early retiree one.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So look, if you're not 59 and a half, because there's folks that retire at 55, right?
Sure.
And 57. Well, if you're not 59 and a half, then you can't start taking money out of your IRA without paying a 10% penalty for early withdrawal. There are some caveats for 401ks. If you play by some specific rules, you might have access to that money, but your IRAs you don't have access to until you hit that 59 and a half. So that's a 10% penalty if you take money out of your IRA prior to that.
Wow.
Now the RMD, let's say that you're 72 and you forgot to take your RMD. Well, that can be a problem because if you don't take your required minimum distribution, there is a 50% penalty that the IRS assesses for that missed RMD. So let's say you're supposed to make $1,000 RMD, required minimum distribution, that year, and you didn't do it. The IRS can come back and charge you $500 penalty for not taking it out, and you still have to take it out the next year and pay tax on it.
Holy moly.
So it's kind of a double whammy there, Jen.
Yeah. And as it turns out, Philip, even death is an excuse
That's
to
right.
skip
No,
this,
not
right?
excuse. Hey, even the year you die, somebody's got to take that RMD out.
Yeah, so if you inherit that, so this is, obviously, if you're the one who dies, it doesn't matter to you, but if you inherit that IRA from a non-spouse, from a parent, then it's on you to make sure that's been taken by December 31st of the year that the death occurs. So it's not like, mom died and now we don't have to worry about this anymore. No, somebody still has to do that.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And get this, we talk about the Secure Act, and they're actually, earlier in the year, we spent some time with Ed Slott, and he went through. There's new proposed regs out there when it comes to beneficiary IRAs that you inherit from non-spouses. And those rules have changed substantially. So if you're not working with somebody that understands those and is on top of all those new IRA rules, that can be a problem, especially if you just inherited somebody's IRA.
Right.
I got to tell you, it's a big change that just came through the pipeline that people need to be aware of.
And this is why it's so important to talk about having some of these difficult conversations ahead of time, because, Philip, if you are the person who inherits an IRA because you're the beneficiary from somebody who passed away, you're going to be dealing with the emotions of that loss and that death. And I feel pretty confident in saying I can guarantee the last thing you want to be thinking about is messing with RMDs and thinking about getting this right, because you're dealing with your own grief. And this is why we talk about getting this done ahead of time. If you're the person who owns this and you're leaving it to somebody, do the planning that you need to do so that way they're not scrambling to react to this. You want to make sure things are set up. Because again, Philip, when we talk about these RMDs, Forbes says required minimum distributions, they can trigger the highest penalty in the tax code if you don't follow the rules. You do not want these steep penalties and potentially higher taxes swiping away at your retirement savings, leaving you with just a fraction of the money that you were counting on for your retirement.
You're absolutely right. If you make a little mistake with your required minimum distribution from your IRA or your other retirement accounts, the penalty for not taking that full amount of your RMD is 50% of the amount that you should have taken, in addition to the income taxes on that distribution. Now, listen, I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. They could trigger higher taxes on your Social Security benefits. And get this, they can cause higher Medicare premium surtax down the road. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up those steep penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes. So listen, for folks today, if you saved at least $150,000 for retirement, give us a call at 863-285-3815 and let's schedule a 30-minute call to make sure that you're doing things the right way and on the right track for the retirement you always dreamed of. Again, that number is 863-285-3815. I want to help make sure that you have the retirement you always dreamed of by walking through our core retirement design. Again, all you have to do is give us a call, 863-285-3815, and schedule your 30-minute phone call. It's that simple, folks. Don't leave it to chance.
Whether it's a 401k or an IRA that you have for retirement, one thing is certain: you cannot treat that retirement account like an ATM. Spending down your savings too quickly and running out of money is an option that you just cannot afford. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Philip Statler at Statler Financial Services agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for information about tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why Statler Financial Services was started. Philip wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement. Statler Financial is more than just convenient, they're knowledgeable and experienced. To set up a meeting with Philip Statler and his team to talk about your retirement plan, all of it, call 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, one stop for a wealth of retirement solutions. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler and co-host Jen Rezac.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. Check him out online at statlerfinancial.com. Or as we get back into it, if you hear something you want to get some answers on, 863-285-3815 is how you can have that conversation with Philip today. That's 863-285-3815. Talking today about 401k and IRA decisions, and whether it is a 401k or an IRA that you have for retirement. One thing is certain, you cannot treat this account like a big old ATM where you just go grab cash whenever you need it. So, Philip, give me some strategies that you recommend here.
Unfortunately, Jen, I've seen people think they can do that.
Oh, boy.
And it has bitten them pretty bad when it comes tax time, right? So one of the things that you look at is you need to have a strategy for withdrawing that money from those accounts. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Don't just start accessing money and taking it out just whenever you want to.
Willy-nilly, I think, is the...
That's right. Willy-nilly. That's the word I was looking for.
Technical term.
Right? So we want to have a distribution strategy in place. And there's several that you can use. Right. So one would be take a fixed dollar amount out, whether that's every year, every month, every quarter. Mm-hmm. Typically, I know when we look at that, and that's kind of where we look at starting with is a fixed dollar amount that we adjust for inflation periodically. And that usually works the best because, and a monthly distribution, I think works the best because people are used to getting that paycheck every month, right? It comes mm-hmm. in, their pension comes in every month, their Social Security comes in every month. Hey, here's one more distribution comes in every month to pay their bills with. So that's the fixed dollar withdrawal. You pick out what you need within reason, right? That's why you need to have the income plan to make sure that you don't take out too much at mm-hmm. one time, because that can be devastating to your total retirement plan. So the other one that you can use is limit withdrawals to just the income that your portfolio produces, right? Okay. You're just going to take the income out. You're not going to take any principal out, which that gives you some fluctuations, right? Because your income could be down 1 month and up the next month, because a lot of times if you have a stock portfolio, well, everybody pays dividends at a different point in time. So one company's quarter is not another company's quarter. So mm-hmm. that could be, it gives you an uneven stream of income there. So, but it's an option, and people do that. They'll just take the dividends off their portfolio, and that's the income they use. The other thing you have to be careful on that one, though, is that you may not take enough. If you're having to take RMDs, that may not give you enough to cover your RMD. So you have to make sure you run those calculations. Okay. Yeah. The other is you create some kind of income floor. So, you look at your accounts and decide at what point does your income kind of floor out. This is a minimum I need, and that's my income floor. And then, hey, everything else is going to get reinvested. Bucket your money. That's one of our favorites, is to kind of bucket it, and we'll create buckets: emergency bucket, income buckets, and then growth buckets, right? So we know we're going to take money out of the income bucket, and that way it's going to last for our lifetime. Another one, well, let's go back to buckets just a minute, because people, when they look at buckets, sometimes misunderstand. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that, because people aren't working anymore, they have a hard time figuring out, okay, what's my emergency money? Because, you always tell people, hey, keep 6 months of your income. Right. So if you get laid off, you got that income. Well, you're working, that's fine. But when you're not working, you're retired, well, your income is your income, right? It's your Social Security, your pension, and whatever you take out of your account. So, but I still feel like you need to have a bucket of emergency money, right? So we'll tell our clients, look, you need to have $20,000 to $50,000, depending upon your comfort level, sitting there for emergencies. Appliances go out, or you need a new roof, or something that's major. Granted, a new roof, most likely insurance is going to cover, but they may not cover it today, mm-hmm. right? We need to get it paid for. So that's the things we look at there. Another option that a lot of folks use, especially if they have a pension and they don't need any additional money out of their retirement accounts, is they'll just take the minimum RMD, right? They want to minimize what they have to take out. They're only going to take their RMD out. They'll work on other ways to help reduce their taxable income in order to do that. The last one I want to cover, and we do this when we do our income planning specifically, is what account sequences do we use to minimize taxes? So if you have a Roth IRA, hey, we want to mix that into the blend so we're not paying tax on all the money we take out. You have a non-qualified account, we want to mix that into the blend to make sure that we reduce taxes as much as possible when we're taking money out of that income plan. So, those are kind of the areas that you need to look at and some distribution strategies that are out there. And I'm sure that other folks have created their own type of distribution strategy out there. But I would just caution you that it needs to be something that mathematically it's going to last your lifetime. Mm-hmm. That's the number one concern I always have. And then make sure that there's some buildup in there to help cover inflation.
So as we are developing that strategy for taking money out of these accounts, how do we figure out how much income we'll need those different accounts to generate in the first place?
Well, it goes back to budgeting, which nobody likes to talk about.
No, it's the worst.
So, and that's why we developed the income plan, because that's going to help us determine where the money's going to come from. So we look at how much are we going to get from Social Security? How much are we going to get from pensions? And then what's the shortfall? Hey, look, if your budget says I need, $5,000 a month, then okay, how much is Mr. and Mrs. Social Security going to be? Mm-hmm. Do we have a pension that's going to help contribute that $60,000? And then ultimately you have a shortfall. What is that shortfall that I need to make up? And that's what we're going to solve for. A good rule of thumb, and I think we've talked about this in an earlier show, is that the 4% rule, especially in the volatility we're seeing now, you need to throw it out the window because that's probably too much right now. Mm-hmm. You need to look at maybe a 2.8, 3.2% withdrawal rate. If you're having to take out more than that to meet your expenses, then there's a chance that you could run out of money before you run out of life. And we don't want that to happen to anybody. Jen, that's why we developed our core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. And so part of our process is a 30-minute, no obligation, free phone call, 30 minutes of our time to ask us questions that you may have, to see where you're headed, to make sure you're on the right path, and to give you some recommendations to make sure that you are on that right path. It's that simple. All you have to do is give us a call at 863-285-3815 to schedule your core retirement phone call. That's all you have to do. It's that simple. And we'll answer your questions and help make sure you're on the right track for retirement.
Now, Philip, as we talk about 401k and IRA decisions, some people might want to take that traditional account, that traditional IRA or 401k, which is tax deferred, and do a conversion, convert that into a Roth account so then they can have tax-free withdrawals later. So talk a little bit about that strategy. Is this something that a lot of people do, and what do we need to know about it?
So I'm going to lay out a couple things here, Jen, because it is a topic of discussion that we have with our clients and prospective clients that we talk to. Because one of the things that I have seen in the years that I've been doing this is that folks waste tax brackets. And I don't want to see anybody waste a tax bracket. So that's what we try to do is, hey, if you're paying zero taxes, that's a problem, especially if you're sitting on an IRA. Let's convert some of that IRA and let's use that tax bracket to maximize your retirement benefits. And so part of our strategy within our core retirement design is to figure out, does a Roth conversion make sense for you? And let's be honest, it does not make sense for everybody. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of folks that it's, if they did it, it's going to push them into a 22 or 24% tax bracket.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so you have to think twice before doing that. It doesn't always make sense, but you don't know whether or not it makes sense for you if you don't run the numbers. And so that's part of our core retirement analysis, is to analyze that for folks to make sure that it's in the right boat, that you're doing the right thing, because it does cause you to pay some taxes. It can also do some other things. It can help cause you to lose some tax deductions and tax credits. It can cause you to pay more tax on your Social Security. the biggest thing that I've seen people get hit with that they didn't expect was they get hit with higher Medicare premiums.
Wow.
And the issue is it takes 2 years or so for that to catch up with you, and you forgot why you're getting hit with it now, right?
Right.
So, but it is still something that everyone needs to look at, and they need to run the results by their qualified tax advisor to make sure they're doing the right thing when it comes to their IRA, Jen.
So bottom line, it's important that we have an income strategy for our retirement. I think you've made that pretty clear. When is the best time to get with a trusted financial partner to make that happen and to take a look at some of the decisions we're thinking about making? Maybe we think we want to do a Roth conversion, but we need somebody to look over this and help us understand all the details that maybe we might be missing.
Well, it's kind of like it's like planning for a vacation, right? The earlier you start, the better you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that look like for folks? Look, it's never too early. Ideally, you want to start probably 5 years before you're going to retire is kind of the sweet spot, but you can start 10 years before. So if you're in your late 50s, it makes sense. If you're going to work till 65 or 67, it makes sense that in your late 50s to go ahead and start looking at putting together an initial plan to make sure you're on track for your retirement.
So how much should you save for retirement? Where do you save it? How do you make sure it will last after you leave your job for good? Philip, those are some of the questions you probably have if you're getting close to retirement.
Jen, savings is a good start to get ready for the next chapter in your life. But you need to do more than just save. You need to have that income strategy for after you stop earning that regular paycheck. When you don't have money coming in, you need to have a plan for how it goes out. If you're listening to me right now and you don't have an income strategy, folks, I invite you to give us a call. Let us help you see where you're at right now. Talk about budgets. We'll talk about, risks to your portfolio, risks that may threaten your retirement when it comes to stock market volatility, inflation that we're seeing right now. Tax increases coming down the road. These are all things that can eat into your retirement. And we can have a conversation about that in that 30-minute phone call that we'll happily provide you. Learn about different options for generating income in retirement and make sure that your standard of living in retirement stays where it is, even with the rising cost. Folks, this phone call is absolutely complimentary, no cost, no obligation. I'm giving you 30 minutes of our time just to make sure you are on the right path. If you've saved at least $150,000 for retirement, give us a call at 863-285-3815 to schedule your no obligation core retirement phone call. It's that simple, folks. Give us a call, 863-285-3815. Don't let this chance get away, especially if you're 5 years or less away from retirement. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Philip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial Services can help you uncover any hidden fees in your retirement accounts. Call today to schedule a time to talk about your situation. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. When you're close to retirement, every dollar matters. Would you like to know where your money is going? Find out what kind of fees you're really paying. Statler Financial Services can help. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Sounds like the mailman's here.
It's time to answer questions from the Statler Financial Mailbag.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here with Philip Statler. He's president and CEO of Statler Financial Services here in Sebring. He is the inaugural Highlander Award winner for Financial Representative of the Year. And Philip gets questions each and every week about all things retirement. So we're going to open up our mailbag. We're going to go over some common retirement questions. We have a really good collection of questions. We figure you probably have some pretty similar questions as well. So hopefully you'll learn a little something from these folks who have some of these questions. And Philip, let's get into it. First question comes from Gary, who is from Wauchula, who's been looking forward to retirement for years, but now that he's less than 2 years away from his target retirement date, he's starting to panic a little bit. And Gary wants to know if this is normal. Do other people get cold feet about retirement? How do I shake this off so I can enjoy myself? Boy, isn't that the way?
Yeah, Gary, that's it's not unusual to have that happen. I mean, I get people that the closer they get, the more real it becomes, the more nervous they get, and we have to just sit down and reassure them that that's why we have a plan in place. That's why we've done the planning. We've done the hard work to make sure that everything's going to, plan the way that we've got it put in the plan. And so, that's what it is. Now, I'll just tell you that I have some folks that, as the closer they get, because they didn't actually write it down, they do keep pushing it back a little bit. And finally, though, something happens and they say, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm going to retire. Mm-hmm. And they get that relief once they make that decision to, okay, this is my last day, and move forward because they have a plan in place, so they know where their income's coming from and how that's going to flow. Mm-hmm. The other case, just for an example, I have a couple of clients that, we put together the plan, and they've come in and said, you know what? I'm not going to make it to that date. I'm retiring.
We're done. We're out of here.
We're done. And that's why we have a plan, because that plan takes those things into consideration. And we know, hey, if we decide to retire a little early, this is what we're going to do. Plop that plan into place and we're ready to go.
Well, and I get cold feet. I get even when we're going on a vacation, right before I get on the plane, I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. Why am I even messing with this? I don't even know if I planned it well enough. And then I have a great time when I go. I mean, I think we get cold feet so many times with so many little things. So, of course, with something as big as your retirement, I can't take a vacation without wanting to back out at the last minute.
It's change, right? We don't like change. And so that's a change in our whole situation. So that's obviously going to
makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Great question, though, Gary. We appreciate you sending that in. Next up is Patrick from Lake Placid, who has some friends who are struggling. This other couple that they know, the husband was in a debilitating car wreck, and they were not prepared to live on the wife's paycheck. They still don't know if this friend is going to recover enough to work again, but this has Patrick and his wife wanting to make sure that they would be okay if something similar happens to one of them. They just want to know, how do they make sure? Where do they get started?
So a couple of things I would say there, because that's there's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
I think you start with preparing a net worth statement for yourself right now and determining, how much do you have on the liability side? And then let's look at the income. Where's the income coming from? And this is a case where we don't think about it, and we probably don't talk about it much on the show at all, really, is disability insurance.
Yeah.
This is where things like having a disability can pay off, and kind of like long-term care insurance. We don't want to think about it, but it's out there. It's something we need to be planning for. And this is no different. We need to have a plan in place, whether that's having enough assets to survive. And how do I look at it? I look at it this way. We build our plans so that we could cut off one person's income and say, okay, how would that work? What would happen? What ifs?
Yeah.
Right. We can walk through some of those scenarios and determine, what's going to happen. What are we going to have to do to make sure that we could survive? And that's just part of the process.
Right. And those are tough things to think about. But the reality is, Philip, none of us is promised tomorrow. And I think we all know someone, or we've experienced ourselves, where everything changes in the blink of an eye. One phone call and everything that you thought you had planned is different. And we just have to face that fact, which isn't a lot of fun sometimes, but gosh, how much better is it to have the money side taken care of if you do have one of these catastrophic incidents, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, not just that, but I mean, you have a spouse that passes away.
Yeah.
That's so, that changes the dynamic totally. And what do we do? How do we do that? That's why we build out ours plans so that we can do what ifs. Okay. Mm-hmm. What if John dies in year 5 of retirement? What's going to happen? And I think that's important.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do one more. Beth, also here in Sebring. Beth's oldest daughter is looking at some college loans, and she has asked about co-signing. Would like mom and dad to co-sign. What are some things to consider before Beth signs on the dotted line? Yeah,
I have a lot of caution to kind of throw out there for this question, Jen, as I look at that. Beth, don't just think twice, think 3 or 4 times before doing that. I unfortunately have some real life experience with this issue. I've had grandchildren that had grandparents co-sign on loans, student loans, and they got, the degree they were seeking at a private school, which was astronomically expensive. Or, she wasn't going to make $30,000 or $40,000 a year. And when she graduated, she had $150,000 in student loans. So things like that are concerning to me. So number one, I would never, ever recommend co-signing on a student loan. There's other avenues out there. I mean, it's just, you get to a point and you have to look out for your retirement. And don't get me wrong, I understand. It's your kid. We want to get them through college. But a lot of times I see kids that they're going to a school that's expensive. They don't know what they want to do.
Taking that meandering route to their major.
Yeah. or they pick a job that isn't going to make $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so it reminds me of an article I read not too long ago about Columbia University, that high price school. Kids are graduating there with music degrees and social service degrees with $200,000 in student loan debt.
Gosh.
And the most they're ever going to make in the jobs they've chosen is $50,000 a year.
Gosh, how do you do that? Oh,
wow. You can't. It's just problematic. That's a whole nother issue that we're dealing with in our country. Bottom line is that you've got to stay true to your goals of getting to retirement, and not to say that they would default, but statistically speaking, in today's world, student loans are just a problem, and you don't want your assets hanging on the line for that student loan debt. So I would just caution you to stay away from that and focus on your retirement. That's what's going to be important to you down the road. Folks, listen, there's a lot of questions that we can answer. There's a lot of things that go into planning for your retirement. But it really and truly starts with risk. Knowing the risk you have in your portfolio, knowing the risk to your income that you might have out there. It's all about risk and making sure that you don't have too much as you head into retirement. Let me help answer those questions for you. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Give us a call, schedule your financial x-ray, and let us stress test your current portfolio. 863-285-3815.
You've been listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. That's all the time we have for this week. Be sure to tune in again next week for more insights from Philip. I'm Jen Rezac. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great week.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.
This radio show is a paid placement.